Hello and welcome back. In this video, like with the others, I'm going to be showing you a few things that I've added to our game. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so the first thing that you're going to see is that I've added these crystals throughout our game. What those are going to do is when I fly over them, you can see that they disappear when I get close to them. Now, I don't have them actually doing anything beyond that point yet, but what I plan to do with this is to create a script that calculates how many crystals there are in the game and how many are left to be collected, and set that up as the main quest objective for this level. I'll also be utilizing where it says score up here at the top. That's just a placeholder for the time being. What I'm going to do there is essentially set up a very simple quest objective log in this position. The next thing that I've done is to prevent our character from leaving the bounds of the game. Previously, when you would fly toward the terrain boundaries, you'd actually fly right through them and into dead space. Now you can see if I fly and try to go past the boundary of the game, the character now stops. So let's go ahead and get out of the game. I'll show you the settings that I used as well as the code in order to achieve these two things. Now the other thing before we dive into that I've added is I have actually added some music to our game. I obviously won't be playing that for the purposes of our video. It might be a little distracting, but I'll go ahead and walk you through how I did that right now. So if you go to the top left, you can click on Create, select Audio, Audio Source. That'll give you this item right here. And if we go to the right, open it in Inspector, you can see I've got Audio Source here. Of course, you'd want to have this clicked on in order to actually play it. But I've just dragged and dropped the audio clip into this area here. I've set it to play on awake or play right when we start the game. And I've set it to loop so that it won't stop at any point while you're playing. So as far as the terrain colliders go, there are a couple things I want to show you. The first thing is on the actual terrain, we have our terrain collider set up. And next on our player, if we actually go down to the root of the player, I have a box collider set as well. What these two things do together is they create an event in the game to where anytime the player comes into contact with another collider, it'll actually trigger some kind of event. So for the player, that event, of course, with the terrain is we don't want it to actually be able to go through the terrain. The other thing that this action requires is we need to have a rigid body on our player as well. Just to remind you from a previous video, or if you're just joining us, rigid body allows for the game engine physics to affect our character. I had said previously I wasn't going to be using it because we have a character that flies and I didn't want gravity to affect the character, but because we need that for the terrain collision, obviously I had to figure out a way to add that in. So the way that I kept the character number one in the air was, even though I am using gravity, I've actually frozen his Y position. So it does keep him at a specific level above the ground. And I've also added this freeze rotation on our X, Y, and Z axis. What that does is when we actually collide with the terrain boundary, it keeps us at the same level and the same rotation. If we didn't have these, let me just go ahead and show you what would happen. So we'll hop back into our game here. So it will technically keep our character still within the boundaries of the game. It won't actually let him go through the terrain, but what it does is you can see the moment you hit it, it starts affecting the actual rotation of the character. And obviously that does not make for a very good game experience. Actually, I can't really control the character at all at this point. So obviously we do need to have those so that the character doesn't have any of these strange effects. So let's go ahead and put those back on the character. So again, three things that you need for that terrain collision is going to be the terrain collider, the box collider on the character, as well as rigid body on the character. Now you may have to adjust some of these settings for your particular use case, but that should be a good place to at least get started. Now, as far as the crystal collecting goes, it actually works in a very similar way. So with the crystals, I've also set up capsule colliders on each of those crystals. It's just a different kind of collider. Again, it helps the game understand that when two objects collide, there is an event that needs to happen. So this particular event did require some code, and it's very simple. Essentially what the code does is it says when these two objects collide, we want to destroy the crystal or this game object.